So what made you, like what's the shift to what you're doing now? Can you talk a little bit about what's you have in the works?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the butterfly technique is my new business model. It's a movement therapy. It's based upon the lessons I learned in Tango, but also because 8 years ago I suffered a workplace injury that left me
Mm.
on my back for about a year, not being able to use my hands.
Wow.
And it was quite life changing for me. You can imagine that when you like I have a very busy brain, so I like to interrogate a whole lot of stuff. I couldn't even hold a book to read, and there were days I
Mm.
couldn't feed myself. So I'm not the type to sit and wallow about that. But my experience of that, and interestingly enough, I learned to dance tango without arms. Which you can do technically.
Wow.
But what I actually learned is a whole lot about the way the body worked. I realized that I wasn't taking responsibility for aspects of my physical health that I should have, and I allowed the modern way of working, which we all suffer, to shape my posture and shape my energy output. So I was basically spending 60 hours a week at an office with a high workload. I had staff, and our electronic world means that we spend most of our time sitting down and not moving. And I mean, it has shown that this is one of the, it's the new smoking. Sitting apparently is the new smoking.
Mm.
But
Wow.
fibromyalgia, which is what I have, is also the fastest growing autoimmune disease currently in the modern world.
Mm.
It's very similar to chronic fatigue syndrome. So what I've discovered through my own process of trying to rebuild my nervous system and reconnect with my physical body, I actually took some of my Tango knowledge and rebuilt that in my system. I also studied Pilates, which is also movement-based therapy, and I trained to be a Pilates instructor because I was fascinated with how that worked. And I learned a hell of a lot more about the neurological, the stuff that's happening neurologically in the body when we move. So I was doing that on the side, plus experiencing my own tango. I did stop teaching for about a year before I started Tango Butterfly. And when I started teaching Tango Butterfly, I found because in my private life I was learning all this stuff about my body and how to rebuild my nervous system, I was pulling this knowledge into my tango classes. So at the end of the
Mm.
day, some of the stuff that I would bring into the tango classes were more about building the neurological connection and using tango as a vehicle to do this. So I
Mm.
had all of these students who I love and I still love. I wish I could see them more, to be honest, because they're very giving. They give me a lot back. But their feedback was that they were sleeping better. They were starting to
Mm.
feel energetically more focused and more able to get into their own lives. I had a friend of mine who suffers from extraordinary anxiety, depression, and she found that Tango actually allowed her to be in the moment for the first time and actually to start feeling like she could be in her own space and be safe in being in her own space. So we built and I started to organically bring in some of these things with individuals according to what felt they actually needed. And most of the feedback I was getting was, wow, this is incredible for me. My life is getting better because of this one experience of a tango class. So it was that experience where I realized there are a lot of people come to tango because they want to meet people. And I totally get that. That's awesome. That's really great. But their expectations is very different to someone who's coming in because they can't sleep, or coming in because
Mm.
they're physically in pain all the time, or they really need the mindfulness practice. So I just found that the more I started progressing on this journey of healing myself, the more I brought this into my tango classes, and the more feedback I got from people to say, hey, you're onto something. So the
Mm.
butterfly technique really is the product of that environment. It's a movement meditation, if you will, but it builds on the research relating to meditation and how good that is for the brain, because I also now
Mm.
facilitate meditation for other people. It also works on your autonomic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, which
Mm.
research shows that the fight or flight response is responsible for 95% of all illness and disease around the world.
Wow.
All illness and disease. It also, the research around tango I mentioned before about the harmonized brains that happen when we
Mm.
dance tango, but also there's been some research here in Melbourne around tango and Parkinson's affected people, and it shows that tango is significantly more effective at managing Parkinson's symptoms than things like acupuncture or physiotherapy. Even they actually showed physiotherapy was less effective than tango. at managing Parkinson's tremors. There was research in Sydney, that also showed that Tango was more effective than meditation for people who are suffering from depression and anxiety-related disorders. So it does back on some research. I've been, and this is, I guess, the entrepreneur story. I'm trying to get used to the idea that I need to be telling people about my year of being on my back and not being able to use my arms. Because truthfully, John, that period of my life, I didn't talk to anybody about. I was suffering a lot, including mental health. It was a very trying time for me. And even now, you see, I'm getting teary now. It was life-changing, but also life-affecting. And I need to tell people that this is a growing issue. Fibromyalgia is a growing issue, and it's not the only issue that's come about because of our sedentary-based electronic lifestyle. Yeah. Also, that we're looking at therapies at the moment that really aren't rebuilding the nervous system. They're really not reconnecting our bodies through movement. So we're tackling either the body isolated or the brain isolated, but we're not actually there's no therapy that builds the two together. We're also designed to be social. Our bodies, our physiological bodies, actually respond differently around people. And so even if you did all of this therapy work by yourself, as soon as you're around other people, there's something that happens with us where we give away our energy. And so I have experienced where I teach Tango and we put a particular intention to the lesson plan where the person learns how to hold their energetic space when they're around other people. And this is really important. This is really empowering because it means that things like chronic fatigue and things like fibromyalgia are less likely to manifest in people's lives. So ideally, any person, and this therapy will be perfect for any person who spends longer than an hour sitting on their butts every day, they're really going to benefit from this therapy. And so I really hope that the people who are interested in what I have to say and the exercises I want to give to people, I really hope that they'll find me and they'll be interested in learning a little bit about themselves, because at the end of the day, the therapy really is about empowering them to understand how their bodies work, understand how their bodies feel, and understand how they can use this in a shared space with other people.